Hello, guys. Welcome back to another episode of the Strongman Winner Circle podcast with my co-host Anthony Furman. And today we're doing a little differently. No guests today. We are talking about moving events. But Anthony, what do we consider moving events?
So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to say I consider moving event. It's an event in strongman in which you have to move something from point A to point B as fast as possible. A lot of times, sometimes they do burden carries where it's like max weight for a set distance. That's not a moving event for me. That's a strength test. That's something totally different. So when I think moving event, I think something is taxing your cardiovascular capacity, your work capacity, your strength in general, and also your anaerobic capacity in general. Your ability to convert energy to shit in your muscles, the whole ATP process and that it's a big thing into it. So it's not involving max effort.
All right. Oh, excellent. So we're both going to talk about three different areas. We're going to both give our experiences and our insights. We're going to start in terms of how you can improve moving events by working on speed and condition, how you can improve moving events by technique and also programming. But let's start with square one. So Anthony, how can we improve moving events by utilizing speed and conditioning?
Yeah, I think one thing you need to do is you have to break the movement down, into what creates the movement. You have strength, which is, for example, Yolk. You have to have the strength to pick it up. You have to have the coordination to walk with it and control the balance of it. And three, we talk about the speed part. That is muscle memory. That is footwork. You go into any athletic endeavor, you don't just become a running back. You don't just become a great running back. You work on your drills one piece at a time. They start the season working on their feet drills, speed drills, ladders, cones, agility. That agility is what's cemented in their being. So when they have to turn it on in full contact, the agility is already there. It's already muscle memory pattern. Their mind to foot essentially connection is there. And that's something we need to do a lot more in strongman is ladder work and speed drills to kind of teach our body what to do without us having to think about it.
I like it. I think it gets kind of overlooked sometimes. Not all of us can. Some individuals, like our friend Terry Rady, was a track star coming out of high school, so doing movement events was really second nature. So he didn't really have to push too much. But in the past, I also did a little track, but I also used to enjoy doing like long sprints, like 40-yard sprints, jump workouts to work the explosion, little suicide drills, and even incorporating suicide drills with some light implements. So nothing heavier maybe than 100 pounds, like a light sandbag, and using that to really kind of increase speed and increase transition time. Because
suicides with an implement, it's like you're living inside my brain when I'm creating new Clash events.
What now?
You said suicides with implements. It's like you're living in here.
Geez Louise. But I would in the past I used to do that a little more. More recently, I probably did a little more in the moving events with light. Like for instance, when I'm tapering down, I'll use a light sandbag, maybe a light keg, and I would, for instance, I would go 50 feet, drop the sandbag, sprint down, sprint back, grab the keg, and finish it over. In terms of like a little, again, something to bring the heart rate up. But
that's a real good way. That's a real classic way to add a little bit of difficulty in the medley and also get that extra conditioning in, because you're simulating a comp environment where even in training, you're not going to be as amped as in a competition. So when you take that little extra sprint, that kind of takes that little bit out of you that you would normally feel in a comp. And one thing I like to say, what I used to do, I would have a very light sandbag or a block or something, and I would hold it like I'm carrying it, but then I would do the speed ladder with that for 50 feet. I would set up speed ladders to go 50 feet essentially. What that does, you're not going to carry a sandbag like you're doing a speed ladder. It's just not happening. But what it does is it teaches your body to move quickly in that position, because holding a sandbag, you're standing differently than if you're not holding a sandbag. So you kind of teach your body to get used to moving your feet quickly in that position where you're kind of leaning back more, as opposed to normally we're leaning forward when we're moving forward.
I like it. Last thing I want to note within this section is some unilateral work. So within strongman, a lot of times you're on one foot. So being able to be, of course, strong in a sense of being on one foot, but also the ability to kind of change directions, especially on moving events. Again, when it's you drop, you got to run back, grabbing the third or fourth implement, the ability to change your directions to limit the time in terms of the transfer or between movements.
because we don't move laterally a lot in our sport, but on some moving events you do, and you want to protect your joints and you want to protect your your ligaments as well. You don't want to just start moving laterally for the first time to come comp day.
What are a few of your favorite unilateral workouts, Anthony?
So one of my favorite, I like the goblet squat, single leg goblet squat to like a bench or a box or something. Leg, any sort of press, leg press work. High, low. You can angle your toes different ways. There's a million ways you can do it. And then upper body, I like unilateral upper body work too, because you have to have them both work the same, even on carries and things like that. People, they underestimate how your imbalances in the upper body could affect your lower body as well.
I like the single leg goblet squats to a box. Of course, I would be nervous to do a kind of like a pistol squat, yeah. But to a box might be a little more easier, so you can go like parallel. So
parallel, and allows you to really explode up too. So you can even add like a little jump step to it, like a little hop, and it teaches you that explosive unilateral work, which is more plyometrics than training, but also do plyometrics.
Anything else within this section, Anthony, that you like to comment on?
Don't get discouraged. Some people come, like Nicholas mentioned, there's guys like Terry. I played football for a number of years. A lot of guys come from backgrounds of sports and we're just inherently a little more athletic to begin with. You'll see that, but it doesn't mean you can't do it, because the way we got athletic was by training athletic stuff. So you just have to start training like an athlete to get athletic.
I like it. The next section. So how can we improve our moving events by technique?
I mean, I think it's highly individual, but it's just, moving the yoke up or down on your back, depending on your comfort level and ability. Where are you putting your arms? Are you putting them high to create a shelf? Do you have a big enough shoulder where you can put them low and use your arms to brace your midline instead of your shoulders? Shorter steps, consciously taking shorter steps, because as you said earlier, you're carrying 1,000 pounds on your back, and every step, that 1,000 pounds is transferring from one half of your body to the next. So you want to minimize the amount of time that you're on one leg with 1,000 pounds, and that's where the fast feet come in.
So let's ride with the yoke a little bit. My main suggestion when it comes to kind of yoke in terms of improving the speed is actually bring your feet together. A lot of times people will have a wide pick and they continue running that yoke wide. And then when you're taking those wide steps, it's going to be very wobbly and it's going to be hard to accelerate through the actual run. So bringing your feet together mimics a little more of a more stable positioning, but also the ability to start accelerating and be at your top speed at the end of the 50 feet compared to having one speed throughout the whole run.
Right, and inherently, when your feet are wider, you're going to take longer strides. Then you'll be wobbling back and forth. That's when you really get into the transferring of that weight across your midsection, your midline, so much, and it really creates that wobble effect.
What do you think about kegs, Anthony? How can someone improve their runs in terms of with keg runs?
Shoulder it.
Shoulder the keg.
No, but seriously, the point. So shouldering works with a lot of these events because it keeps the weight off of your lower half. The higher you carry it, the more free your body is to move. So the higher you get the bag or the keg on your chest, the more free you're to move. Your body can move down low, and you move faster. This is how it is. So
especially a lot of beginners or people starting the sport, so that usually they'll have they'll do just the easy kind of pickup, but of course the keg is at their waist, so it's hitting their legs. So again, Anthony talking about being able to kind of free your legs so you can move fast. So getting that higher on your chest. You do want to have an efficient pick, but also you don't want to spend a lot of time to that efficient pick so your legs move. So you got to figure out what is the right movement. Some heavyweights can do that fast pick and have that really high elbow positioning and keep that keg so that keg is sitting almost on their sternum as they run. Not all of us can do that. Sometimes like a quick mini lap to get that high on the sternum, high on the upper abdomen really helps. And then the same thing kind of goes with sandbags. Again, if you're not shouldering it to really free the legs, again, getting that high onto the sternum. And then with something with sandbags, I think we've chatted about it in the past on other podcasts. I think a lot of people kind of forget to kind of use the actual sandbag or the actual implement. They don't actually try to like squeeze their hands under there for that perfect position. But on every sandbag, generally it has a horn. You can grab that horn in order to really utilize. So you only have to fix your hand under one side and kind of like wiggle your hand on one side, rather than do that with both hands and waste time find the right hand positioning before you actually pick it up. So if
Yeah.
you kind of grip with one side, fix the other hand and rip it up, I think that's usually a pretty efficient way for the sandbag.
One thing I would do to get better at that is because you're right. The pick is so important in this when you come talking about speed. Because if you have a bad pick where you start panicking, that's how the bag stays low and it screws up the rest of your run. So practice the pick. So if you're doing sandbag runs, I know Nicholas introduced me to this concept with a log where I would clean 2 or 3 times and then press it. It's the same thing. I used to do the same thing with sandbags. I don't know why I ever didn't try with anything else, where I would do 2 or 3 picks and then take the bag. So you're working on the picks more times. Because listen, you need to work on walking, but walking is walking. You know, putting the bag where you need it is really the skill you don't have coming into the sport. So that's what you need to work on, not walking.
You heard it. What do you think about farmers, Anthony? What suggestions would you give there?
Man, I tell you, the one thing I see a lack of was aggression. Move with them motherfuckers, you know, be aggressive. But more honestly, so I like doing a couple things with farmers. I like doing a split stance. So what I would do is my right foot, I would put it slightly behind my left foot, probably where my big toe ends on my left foot. That's where my big toe starts on my right foot. Now, what that does is it creates just a little bit of an imbalance where I pick and I pitch forward immediately. And it takes me right into the momentum and speed off the gate of the farmer. So instead of picking up and then having to generate that force and momentum, it takes you right into it. It's similar to placing your hands back on the farmers a little bit. I never like doing that because it dips too much. It takes too much out of control. I like grabbing the farmers in the center, a little bit of off-centered stance, and then I tuck my chin and look at a 45-degree angle to keep my body moving forward instead of up and kind of leaning back.
So it's with farmers, I also kind of think as well, when you have, of course, you have your grip strength, but if your grip strength is lacking, you're not going to be able to run as fast, because the faster you move, the more the farmers are moving around and oscillating, the more stress is going to be on your hands. So do you kind of believe or concur that if the better your grip strength in that sense, that faster you move, and someone should probably increase their grip strength?
I'd say that honestly, that's probably the most important thing with farmers. If you can grip it, you can move it. If you can't grip it, you can't move it. So it's pretty, and again, the harder it is to grip, the slower you're going to move, because that's just how it works.
So I put on my YouTube, I put out a farmer's video, but I think it's good to mention that the way you grip it, some people like to keep it on top of their top hand, but if you're able to really place that farmer's in that mid hand and stand up, and it kind of fastens into place. So
I would always do like a scoop. So I would come under, I would scoop like this, and then I would get set like that and straighten my wrist. And that would really seat it very deep. And it was almost like it's not a full hook grip, because they're usually a little too thick to hook grip, but it really puts you in that deep seated position where you can walk in, and by the time it starts sliding down, you're almost done with the course.
Anything else to chat about within farmers?
And I would just say keep the same thing. The footwork drills I was talking about, keep the unilateral work. It's a very important suitcase carries, because that addresses the unilateral weakness. Because when you walk farmers, you can watch almost everybody's video at a challenging weight and see which side of their body they're compensating. Everybody does it. That's just almost how our bodies work. So, but you do unilateral work to make up for that deficiency, to bring it up as much as you can.
I like it. So we're moving on to our next section. So improving our moving events by programming. So so far we've had a theme of farmers, yoke, kegs, and sandbags. So let's break down each movement. So with sandbags and kegs, what would be your thoughts in terms of the best way you can program maybe like a short block, or maybe like a 6-week block in terms of moving efficiently with a keg and sandbag medley?
Yeah, so if I'm doing a front-loaded carry, which our sandbags, our kegs, our Husafels, anything you're carrying in the front of your body, and I'm doing a specific block for it, I use the wave principle. With those events, depending how bad you are, you can do those 2 times a week. It's taxing, but it's not the most taxing thing. And you want to wave with that. So you want to manage both intensity and load. So if you're high intensity one week, you're low intensity next week. You might be a higher load the next week at a lower intensity volume, if that makes sense. And if one week, if you're a high volume, low intensity, next week you'll be lower volume, high intensity. For carries, sandbag, I'll say week 1, 300 feet carries with 60% of contest weight. That is training your cardiovascular system and your ability to kind of grit through, and your ability to maintain positioning. Next week, I'll go heavier, 100% to 200%, or not 200%, that's never going to happen, to like 110%. maybe, and then you work shorter distances, and that's going to get used to the comp style, comp weight, but you don't want to have that high intensity the same week on both those principles.
I like it. A little bit in terms of, in my experience, in the past, in some contests, I would be training almost comp weight on the moving event too early in the programming, and that cost me going forward. I would be slow coming to that last bag or that last implement and not lap it and or have that aggressiveness going into it because I've struggled on maybe that last actual bag. And that's kind of happened. What happened to me in 2020, doing the sandbag load at ASM, is that I was struggling on that last bag, but I was pretty fast within the first 3 or 4. Coming back to ASM 2021, I kind of learned my lesson, and I actually never trained close to competition weight. So for instance, our last bag was 355 and the heaviest I went in training was 308.
For everyone that's watching at home, when you're doing exceedingly heavy shows like that, this changes things a little bit too. Nick is very right. I wouldn't be hitting a 350 bag every other week if I was training for that. That's a bit much. So again, I'm speaking generally with our amateur population, they tend to be a lot stronger than the weights prescribed in a lot of the situations. And that's kind of what I'd speak to as general. But we're talking specialized elite at weights like that. Yeah, I ain't going 110% of that.
So I think in the end, yeah, don't touch competition weight until game time. And, and even if it's a 4-bag medley, you can even do really fast, a few sets at like doing 3 bags. You can,
and you can even lower the weight, add more bags. So a 5-bag medley, lower weights. And when I say weight, so you don't have to touch comp weight. So I could do 60% one week. That's the low part of the wave. I do 80%. Then come back down to 70%. Then go back to 85%. And that's kind of the weight principle I'll use in percentages when dealing with that.
I like it. So I have my thoughts for Farmers and Yolk, but I want, of course, want to hear your thoughts in terms of programming properly for Farmers and Yolks.
I mean, the big thing with those two are you have to be strong to start. You have to be strong. You have to squat, in my opinion, to be really good. You have to squat, front squat, Zercher squat, back squat. You have to find a way that you can squat and really build that base. Leg press can work. I've seen that work with a lot of people as well. But you have to overload compound movements. And then you have to practice. You have to practice. Like I said, footwork, speed work, you have to find the correct positioning. It's a lot more that goes into these. And again, when I was really bad at Yolk and good at Yolk, I did Yolk twice a week. I don't recommend it for anybody, but that's what I had to do at that time to get good in a short amount of time. If you do a lot of volume on Yolk, you need to really manage your week better. You need to take a lower day out. You need to understand that it's not a throwaway event. That is taxing your lower body like any other lift would. So don't look, if you're doing heavy squats, I hope you don't do heavy Yolk that week in training. There's no need.
Would you pair heavy squats with heavy Yolk on the same day?
So if I'm doing heavy squats, I would go lighter Yolk. That would be a little bit of my technique work. And then the next week, if I'm doing lighter squats, I throw in the heavy Yolk at the end. I do like that. I do like throwing Yolk onto my lower days because I think it makes sense.
My experience with it, and similar to kind of some of the points you just made, I like to almost in the concept of bulletproofing your Farmers or Yolk. Usually, so keg and sandbags, those implements are going to be pretty straightforward throughout any contest, any gym that you go to. Yolk and Farmers handles, they can, Yolk and Farmers handles can always differ gym per gym, contest per contest.
Will differ.
And then, for instance, if you have a Yolk and then you're going to a car Yolk, you have a Yolk going into a car walk, it's always gonna be a little different. So I always think of the concept of bulletproofing. So almost adding in extra volume on the Yolk or Farmers to really make sure you're ready for all situations. So sometimes you're not necessarily going competition weight or 100%, but really going maybe sometimes over 50 feet, doing like 100-foot runs.
With Yolk and Farmers, I've had a lot of success with people. The longer runs really benefit people when they're doing that 50 to 60. If they get used to going 100 feet, that 60 feet turns into nothing, even if you increase the weight.
So I think, go with the term bulletproofing. Bulletproof those Yolks, bulletproof those Farmers. So add in those extra volume.
You're going to have a carry. Every competition, you're going to have a carry. If you bulletproof your carry, you save yourself time and energy. And if you know you can do it, it takes, it's wonderful.
Even adding assistance work. So with Yolk, I used to like doing like sometimes belt squats or belt squat marches to really work on the hips, because it's just such a heavy on the hips in terms of the actual exercise. With farmers, I would add in wrist rolls or even figure 8 movements. I got to demonstrate that one of these days, but taking 2 45-pound bars and going into a figure 8 for either a minute or 90 seconds until your grip goes. But it's a practice in terms of when those bars starts moving around the circle, it adjusts your grip. So you're controlling the momentum, and the act of controlling the momentum is a huge grip workout. So
yeah, I see a lot of people make mistakes. They do the grip crushers a lot for grip stuff. They don't understand that it's 2 different grips. With the farmers, you're already closed. With the crush, it's a crushing grip. It's different than a closed grip. So if you do use grips, one thing I like to do is pick a grip that you can't close, and then you close it with 2 hands on your leg, and then you hold it as long as you can, because that's essentially what you're doing with farmers or anything. We're holding, right? We're not closing on these implements. So if you practice that, axle holds, like similar like Nick talked about with the barbell. I used to do this with axles. You pick the 2 axles up and hold them by your side, like, to mimic a farmer at your side hold.
I like it. Anything else you want to chime in?
Yeah, just don't overdo it either. I see a lot of people, they shift too early into event training. Like we said, you can train big bits of the event, but you don't have to set up the whole medley 12 weeks out. You don't have to do it. Remember, any medley is a sum of the whole. So in any medley, you're going to have parts to work. Until you master each individual part, you're not going to master the medley.
I like it.
Yeah, wisdom.
So those are our 3 sections, and of course those are our thoughts and suggestions. We've done a deadlift version of this, so if you guys haven't watched that episode, I would encourage you to check that out either on YouTube or Spotify or Apple Podcast. We're looking to kind of cover some other events as well as having other guests on board. Don't forget as well, if you guys want us to cover a certain specific conversation, you can always comment, shoot us messages or throw in the comments.
Make it an appropriate thing you want us to cover.
Appropriate. That's important. Don't forget to subscribe and follow our podcast, notification bell, so you know when the new videos and podcasts come out.
We got to create an IG for this now.
IG. Oh my God, that's
for Winner Circle Podcast.
Whole lot of work. But anything else you'd like to add in, Anthony?
No, hey, I just want to say I've been traveling a lot, so a lot of people been talking to me, and I just thank you everyone for tuning in as always, and we just hope to keep doing this for you, keep doing this good stuff.
Hell yeah! But guys, that's it for today. Check out some of the other episodes, and until next time, stay strong.